Well, new this morning, Border Patrol agents found a man-made tunnel connecting Juarez in Mexico to El Paso, Texas.
Well, an El Paso man was sentenced to over 2 years in prison after using a border tunnel to smuggle migrants into the U.S. According to the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Western District of Texas, last January, U.S. Border Patrol and ICE Homeland Security investigation officers found a man-made tunnel connecting Juarez and El Paso.
That's the most brazen approach I've seen to trying to come into the United States.
67 agents, 4 cities, 1 tunnel network, El Paso, Laredo, McAllen. The Rio Grande running black under the last hour before dawn. No sirens, no warning, just armored tires rolling over empty streets and Black Hawk rotors chopping the fog above South Texas like blades through wet cloth. FBI, ICE, DH, and SWAT moved in silence toward stash houses, tunnel mouths, cartel bars, and warehouses disguised as import businesses. They were told it would be massive. They were not told it would be historic. And what they found first was only the skin of it. Doors blew inward at 4:12 a.m. In El Paso, agents hit a cinder block warehouse behind a truck repair lot and found 1.9 million fentanyl pills packed in brake pad boxes, 740 kilos of methamphetamine hidden inside engine casings, and 3 tunnel scouts sprinting for a steel hatch welded beneath a hydraulic lift. In Laredo, a cold storage building turned out to be a narcotics hub chilled to preserve heroin bricks and cocaine bundles stamped with the black crown insignia of Los Reyes Cartel. In McAllen, a 2-story house near the river held 27 migrants locked behind reinforced doors, a tunnel map pinned under a child's drawing, and enough cash on folding tables to make rookie agents stop breathing for a second. Bundles, walls of them, heat-sealed and stacked chest high. Then came the tunnel. Not a dirt shaft, not some desperate hole under a fence. This was engineered. Concrete supports, ventilation, fiber lines, rail carts, lead strips running deep under the riverbed. The kind of build that needs permits, inspections, and somebody high enough to make questions disappear. Agents pushed through the damp steel throat and found crate after crate after crate. By sunrise, the first count had crossed 6. 7 tons of fentanyl, plus cocaine, heroin, and meth headed north under produce manifests and construction invoices. It should have been the headline of the year. It wasn't, because at the far end of the tunnel behind a biometric vault no smuggler should have been able to afford, they found a sealed ledger with government transit codes and one signature repeated over and over again. Ricardo Salazar, Border Infrastructure Commissioner. And that was where the real panic began. Miles away, under white lab lights in a federal cyber forensics room, analysts weren't looking at drugs. They were chasing patterns. A hard drive recovered from the McAllen house had been wiped twice and burned once, but one fragment survived. Then another. Then a lattice of shell companies opened across 6 monitors like a spider web catching light. Freight firms, concrete suppliers, solar startups, water treatment subcontractors, a charity that funded youth development on paper and tunnel ventilation on the books. Payments moved from El Paso to Monterrey, from Laredo to Panama, from Houston to accounts in Malta and Corral, then circled back through ghost payrolls and land acquisitions along the river. Someone had built a cartel empire that looked, at a distance, like regional development. They gave it a name before sunrise. Operation Iron Vein. And if you think the drugs were the story, wait until you hear who approved the roads. Salazar's digital signature sat on bridge access waivers, drainage projects, tunnel reinforcement permits, and emergency maintenance closures timed almost perfectly with cartel convoy movement. Patrol slowdowns lined up with his infrastructure detours. Border camera outages overlapped with construction crews no one could later identify. This wasn't one compromised official taking envelopes in parking lots. This was command-level treason dressed in public service language. Los Reyes Cartel didn't tunnel under the system. They poured concrete into its foundations and called it progress. But the screens kept opening. An analyst zoomed in on a secure message chain tagged with a phrase nobody in the room had seen before. Corridor 0. That's when the map changed. Red markers pulsed far beyond the river. Safe houses in San Antonio. Chemical suppliers outside Corpus Christi. A mansion outside El Paso used as a command bunker. A private airstrip near Laredo. A judge's retreat lodge in the hill country where sealed cases and future warrants were discussed over whiskey and campaign donations. Hours later, they would realize the tunnel raid wasn't the operation. It was the distraction. Because while cameras were pointed at the river, the deeper network was already trying to burn itself alive. At 8:40 a.m., the hammer dropped. The command center wall lit up with dozens of simultaneous warrants, 1,200 federal agents, 47 SWAT teams, Blackhawks over the valley, tactical boats on the Rio Grande. U.S. Navy patrol support offshore tracking suspected maritime handoff routes. F-15 fighter jets flying deterrent sweeps over restricted corridors after intelligence suggested cartel scouts might try to move key figures by private aircraft. South Texas woke up to rotor wash, roadblocks, and doors exploding open from Brownsville to El Paso. A desert superlab outside Fabens went down first. Agents pushed through a maze of chemical vats and found industrial mixers producing fentanyl powder at a scale that felt more military than criminal. In a hillside mansion west of Laredo, cartel guards with suppressed rifles tried to hold a marble stairwell for 42 seconds before flashbangs turned the entire entrance into smoke and screams. Beneath the house, behind a wine cellar wall, they found a command room with convoy schedules, encrypted radios, and a live feed from highway cameras inside 3 counties. In McAllen, a convoy disguised as municipal utility trucks made it 12 miles before ICE interdiction units boxed it in and ripped open false compartments packed with pill presses, ledger books, and 2 Barrett 50 caliber rifles wrapped in oilcloth. They thought they were breaking a drug ring. They were dismantling a parallel government. By noon, helicopters were lifting survivors out of a trafficking warehouse near the river where 63 people had been held behind chain-link cages under industrial heaters. Some were migrants. Some were debt hostages. Some were there because a cousin owed money to Los Reyes. A DEA medic carried a girl out with an evidence blanket around her shoulders while agents photographed a wall covered in route times, payment codes, and names of public employees marked reliable. Reliable. That word hit harder than the gunfire. Then investigators opened the server logs. The room went cold. One list named 32 law enforcement officers on cartel payroll. Another flagged 11 border employees who altered screening priorities on specific nights. 3 judges, 2 state legislators, 4 county procurement officials. Dispatch leaks, patrol grid falsifications, evidence lockers accessed off record. Bitcoin transfers split into micropayments. Cash drops hidden in gym lockers and church donation boxes. The officer leaking one raid schedule had 12 years on the force. A wife, 2 kids, and a fishing photo still taped inside his locker. Another had once received a Valor Medal. Now both were on a spreadsheet titled Orchard Maintenance. That was the cartel joke. Men who protected the orchard while the fruit rotted from inside. And then came the name nobody in the first wave expected. Not Salazar. His son, Mateo Salazar, listed nowhere in government, appeared in surveillance stills walking through tunnel construction zones in a reflective safety vest, smiling beside contractors later identified as Los Reyes engineers. He wasn't taking orders. He was delivering them. Suddenly, the whole structure made terrible sense. Ricardo Salazar built the corridors in daylight. Mateo populated them at night. One made permits appear. The other made bodies disappear. And if you're wondering how deep betrayal can go, listen to this. One intercepted memo outlined a 5-year plan to turn border infrastructure contracts into exclusive cartel-controlled logistics routes protected by public funds. They weren't hiding from the state. They were redesigning it. By evening, honest officers were arresting men they had once called partners. One deputy chief came out in handcuffs, still wearing the same badge as the agent reading him his rights. A veteran Border Patrol supervisor broke down after identifying a voice on a leaked comms recording. "That's my guy," he whispered. "I trained him." Across 3 cities, desks were cleared, lockers pried open, service weapons tagged, and framed commendations taken down from walls that suddenly looked like disguises. This wasn't a department with a few bad apples. This was a second force nested inside the first, answering not to the law but to Los Reyes Cartel and the money flowing through Corridor Zero. And the money was beyond obscene. In vaults, warehouse floors, tunnel caches, offshore recovery notices, bearer bonds, coded transfer slips, and vacuum-sealed currency bricks. Investigators tallied $8.4 billion in cartel reserves and liquid holdings tied to the network. Not 10 million. Not 100 million. 8.4 billion. Enough to buy silence in districts, counties, ports, and campaigns. Enough to keep the machine fed even when shipments burned. Enough to convince ambitious men that loyalty was just another contract clause. But the final file hurt the worst. It wasn't a weapons list or a kill order. It was a projection. Neighborhoods marked by overdose spikes, school zones flagged for future distribution corridors, shelters identified as recruitment pools for trafficking debt, numbers predicting how many bodies fentanyl would leave behind if supply expanded exactly as planned, families reduced to metrics, streets reduced to percentages. Power doesn't always arrive with gunfire. Sometimes it comes as a spreadsheet, a permit, and a handshake in a clean office. If you're still here, you already know this isn't just about tunnels or money. It's about what happens when the people sworn to protect the border start auctioning it piece by piece. Like this video so more people see it. Comment expose if you think every official handling public infrastructure and border contracts should face full forensic audits. Share this, because silence is how networks like this survive.